President Biden will go to the war zone tomorrow to show support for Israel. The president has already sent 2 aircraft carriers and has U.S. troops ready to deploy to the region.
The trip comes just as Iran is threatening to widen the war if Israel invades Gaza. It's all part of the high-stakes brinkmanship between Israel, the United States, and Iran. Chris Mitchell reports.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken explained one of the main reasons for the president's visit.
President Biden will underscore our crystal clear message to any actor, state or non-state, trying to take advantage of this crisis to attack Israel. Don't. To that end, he's deployed 2 aircraft carrier groups and other military assets to the region.
According to the Pentagon, about 2,000 U.S. troops may be deployed to the region to support Israel in intelligence and medical roles, should Israel launch a ground incursion into Gaza. Iran's foreign minister warned of a preemptive attack if Israel begins a ground invasion of Gaza and said time is running out.
If the limited and extremely tight windows of opportunity available to the United Nations and political actors are not used over the coming hours, opening new fronts against the Zionist regime is inevitable.
The IDF tells CBN News Iranian-backed Hezbollah is slowly escalating the situation on the northern border.
So there's the threat of that being, of the border heating up even further. Speaking to a friend of mine who was unable to come to work today because she was up until 6 o'clock in the morning. She lives in the north next to an artillery battery, and she was up until 6 o'clock with regular artillery fire into Lebanon. Things are hot and getting hotter.
Security expert Ari Sasha says Hezbollah presents a much more formidable military challenge than Hamas.
Hamas is the equivalent of AAA ball, the Toledo Mud Hens, and they're a good team. But Hezbollah is the Boston Red Sox. They're major league. They're near peer, I would call them.
This as new atrocities are emerging from the Hamas attacks on Israeli civilians. Israel's foreign ministry released this footage of an autopsy of people burned to death by Hamas.
I'm 31 years a forensic pathologist. I'm used to see dead people, but I never saw people that are conjoined together while they are burned, trying to hug each other. I'm sorry.
Hamas released this footage of a 21-year-old Israeli hostage kidnapped from Sderot. The IDF now says the total number of hostages is 199. On the Gaza border, Special Ops Sergeant Major Doron Kadar, fresh from the front lines, told CBN News this has unified all Israelis.
What I can tell you is what this has done, it has united all of us across the board, whatever our political agendas were before this broke out. We are all coming together. The Air Force, the ground forces, the Navy, everybody is coming, and we're ready to do our part to defend our country and to stand shoulder to shoulder.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, joining us now for more is Danny Ayalon, the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. And Ambassador, thanks so much for joining with us.
My pleasure, Gordon. Always good to be with you.
Let's talk about President Biden's visit. What message is Israel looking for?
Well, I would say threefold. First of all, it's nice to have the solidarity of the United States, our best friend and ally. And I know, Gordon, you and your viewers have done so much for this great alliance, you know, on the basis of our Judeo-Christian beliefs. So it's solidarity. Certainly is deterrence, as we've heard Secretary Blinken, especially deterrence against Iran and Hezbollah. And the third thing, which is not less important, is to build the region architecture after the war, because we cannot keep what we have seen. I mean, this is not another war. It's not just a war between countries or armies. It's a war between ideas. And we have on the one side of the divide the diabolical, satanic thinking and doing of the global jihad. The jihadists, which are trying to destroy our way of lives and our faith, are concentrated in Tehran, but they have tentacles and proxies all over. Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, they have the Houthis in Yemen, they have militias, the Iranian militias in Iraq and Syria, they are in Sudan, they are in Libya, all over. So this will have to be a new order, and I believe that the president, when he's here, he's not just coming to Israel, but he will also meet moderate Sunni leaders like the King of Jordan and the President of Egypt, who have a major stake of defeating Hamas and the global jihad, because they're after them in order to make one caliphate all over the Middle East and beyond.
Well, let's take a much longer view, and I'll speak as an American, where 9/11 occurred, and then we invaded Afghanistan to wipe out the Taliban, and here we are over 20 years later, and guess who's back in power? The Taliban. Are you concerned that Israel can win the war but still continue to lose the peace?
Well, it is a concern, and we have had too many bad examples in history, including recent history. But this time we're determined to have a different outcome, not just on the military front and fields, but also in the political arrangement afterwards. And for that, we will need a political support from not just from the United States, but also from all our allies, NATO allies in Europe, all the Western countries, which should understand that the line in the sand is drawn now in Gaza. But what will happen, the fate of the war with the Hamas, ISIS in Gaza, will determine how all of us will live throughout the world.
I agree. I think we're into an enormous battle of ideology, and on one side you have an ideology that seems to be absolutely dedicated to death. There was a Hamas senior official quoted on October 8th. You know, it's just incredible, the timing. But he says that Israel loves life, and we honor our martyrs. That's what they want to be martyred for the sake of Allah. And you look at that quote, and how do you come against that kind of ideology? I mean, this is a time for the world to stand and say, no, we want to defend life. How do we do that on the world stage?
Gordon, this may be the most important point, and thank you for raising that, because the short answer is unconditional surrender. And we cannot, there's no coexistence with those who wish death upon you, and they do not care for dying themselves. And by the way, they are very cowardly, because, you know, who did they fight in the first 24 hours when they were advancing and the IDF was still regrouping and was not there? Who were they fighting? They were fighting babies and old ladies and entire families who were unarmed. And it was devastating results, just like the Nazis back in 1945. So I believe that we should have the same sort of an end game as we had with the Nazis and as we had with the Imperial Japan back in 1945. That means unconditional surrender. And after that, you can rebuild the area, hopefully to the better of the population itself.
Okay, well, it looks like it might turn into a much wider war. Iran is now threatening preemptive action. Do you view that as a threat, or are they actually going to go forward with it?
Well, it is a threat. I think they are waiting in the wing, although I can tell you from observing the Ayatollahs, which took hostage the entire Iranian people. The Iranian people are basically very good and a peace-seeking country, but they took over. And there is an aberration of history in the last 40 and so years of the Ayatollah's regime. But I observe that the Iranians are very careful about themselves. They are not confronting us directly, not so far. They will fight, Gordon, until the last Palestinian. They will fight until the last Lebanese or Syrian or Iraqi or Yemenite, the Houthis, but not themselves, although things may be different now. And I believe they were waiting to pounce on us. Were we to succumb to the surprise attack by Hamas in the south, I believe the plan was also to have Hezbollah joining in and maybe even Iran. But at this point, they have lost the element of surprise. Now we're concentrating all our operations in Gaza to take out Hamas. If Hezbollah joins, I believe that we have sufficient force to deflect that, and then when we're done with Gaza, take care of Hezbollah in the same way of unconditional surrender. And here we come again. Gordon, I want to thank you, and through you, the entire American people that on a bipartisan support come out to our aid. And the two strike groups, so the carriers of Gerald Ford and the Eisenhower carrier, which is coming now into the Mediterranean, the eastern basin of the Mediterranean off the coast of Beirut. They are enormous deterrents, and I believe that this may be hopefully sufficient for the Hezbollah not to act seriously, except all those skirmishes and all those provocations that they are committing as we speak now.
Well, one of the concerns I have on the carrier group is, are we getting mixed messages? I think the obvious is to deter Iran from entering in, and that if they launch anything against Israel, there'll be overwhelming destruction at the other side. But there are 2,000 troops that were ordered to prepare for deployment on the coast and to help with evacuation. Is there any concern on Israel's part on that particular order?
No, Gordon, and we have not asked, nor will we ever ask for Americans to fight for us. We do not need boots on the ground. What we see with the carrier groups is a real support, and mostly in, as I mentioned, deterrence, but not only that. In real terms, they have a state-of-the-art electronic warfare equipments on board, which can really help deflect incoming missiles, if they do, from Hezbollah and Iran. And the nice thing here is that basically Israel military and American military have been conducting live munitions exercises in the last few years, exactly for such a scenario. So the American missile defense and electronic warfare is pretty much enmeshed with the Israeli ones. So it's giving us another layer of support. You know, we have the Arrow, we have David Sling, we have Iron Dome. Your carriers have what is called the Aegis, with everything that they have on board. So it's another layer of support, which can, I think, save, if the moment comes, will save a lot of lives. And again, I don't think that we will need to see much more than this action by the carrier groups, and certainly not a full-ground invasion.
Well, Ambassador, thanks for being with us. We stand with you. Hamas has shown us the face of evil. We will stand with you until it is absolutely eliminated. They have lost the right to exist. Hamas should be no more. And we stand with you. Thanks for being with us. Well, let's turn to the northern border. CBN correspondent Chuck Holton joins us now from northern Israel. So, Chuck, there's been some action on the northern border overnight. Artillery, what's going on?
That's right. Not just overnight, but about 30 seconds ago, they fired a couple of rockets from Israel. This is Mount Hermon behind me, so we're just looking north is this way. And the rockets came from off to my left, went right over our heads and right into Lebanon and hit two targets literally just moments ago. So there have been incursions along this border in the last 24 hours, Hezbollah operatives coming in. There have been gunfights along the border where they're trying to shoot out cameras and that sort of thing. And as we're seeing right now, rocket fire now going both ways. So the big question is whether or not Hezbollah is going to attack Israel, but in reality, they have been attacking Israel. They've just been doing it at very small scale, and what everybody hopes is that that doesn't ramp up in the moments to come. Of Gordon.
Well, you've talked to intelligence experts in northern Israel. What do you think Hezbollah is trying to accomplish, or what do they think Hezbollah is trying to accomplish right now?
Right. The military intelligence lieutenant colonel we talked to earlier today said that she felt like Hezbollah was trying to draw Israel into a war, Hezbollah and Iran, and they're trying to encourage or convince the rest of the Muslim world to join in and sort of dogpile onto Israel as well. Now, she has been very concerned because of the fighting up here. She had her daughter here with her, and she said she was up all night listening to the gunfighting along the border as that incursion took place, and those 4 Hezbollah terrorists were eliminated. She is very concerned that I asked her about the deterrent effect. With the United States sending troops in here, with President Biden planning to visit on Wednesday, does that deter Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran? And she said, I think that I used to believe in deterrence, but I don't anymore. I think that they are dead set on their mission. They've been planning for this for years, and they are going to execute what they've been planning.
Well, we know Hamas was preparing. They were training for months for the October 7th attack. And we've heard, I mean, it was part of our package earlier, Hezbollah may even be an equivalent to the IDF, to the Israeli military. So are they entrenched? Are they in tunnels? If there's any kind of action on that northern border, how hard will it be for Israel to win?
What we have seen today, Gordon, is a lot of military activity up here on the northern border. Obviously, I can't give a lot of specifics, but I'll just say that there's a tremendous amount of IDF soldiers, armor. We saw tanks. We saw armored personnel carriers, trucks, heavy equipment transports, and all along this border as we've driven along it throughout the day. We've seen them digging fighting positions, fixing up older bunkers, and occupying high ground. So they are obviously taking this very seriously. They don't want to get caught unawares as they did back on October 7th. They've basically cordoned off now 4 kilometers back from the border, and this is as close as we can get right now. They even just came here a second before I went live and told us, hey, you guys need to put your body armor on because this place just got attacked an hour or so ago. And so obviously both sides are ramping up here. The real question is, does Hezbollah actually try something? And I think when we talked to that lieutenant colonel, she said, you have to take your enemy at his word. And they've been saying all along they were planning to do this. They even released a video about it. They did a training exercise back in May of this year where they actually simulated breaking through the wall and murdering civilians inside Israel, doing exactly what happened on October 7th down in the south. So she said, we just figure it's a matter of when and not if.
All right. Well, Chuck, I hope you stay safe. And as I was watching you, I was wondering, where's your helmet? You're in a rocket zone, so please stay safe.
Right here.
Yeah. Get yourself in a safe place. Get out of the battle zone. And thanks for the insight. Thanks for being with us.
Well, on the heels of the FBI director's warning of increased terror threats in the United States, security experts continue sounding the alarm that America is at risk of attacks similar to what Israel experienced. As CBN's Del Hurd reports, our borders are vulnerable, with data confirming terrorists have snuck through.
Under questioning by FBI agents, New Yorker Ali Karani admitted in 2017 to being a member of something called Unit 910. It's the Black Ops unit of Hezbollah, controlled by Iran. Karani told agents he was trained to be a suicide bomber and was scouting targets in New York City. He's now in prison. Another Unit 910 member in prison this year, New Jersey resident Alexei alias Alex Saab, had also scouted potential targets around New York City. While the exact number of Hamas and Hezbollah sleeper cells operating within the United States is not known, A comprehensive study by George Washington University last year found the most Hezbollah activity in Michigan, New York, North Carolina, and California. If Americans are wondering if they're safe from the kind of attack Hamas carried out against Israel, terrorism experts say the answer is not encouraging. Former FBI Special Agent Eric Caron.
We have over 1,000 joint terrorism task force cases going on here in America today relating to Muslim extremists.
So far this year, authorities have caught 151 people on the FBI's terrorism watch list, trying to illegally enter the U.S. through the southern border. That's 50 times higher than 2 years ago. Most are coming through Panama's Darien Gap, where journalist Michael Yan says he's seeing 3,000 to 5,000 migrants pass through every day on their way to the U.S.
I see a lot of Chinese coming through. Most of the people you see coming through are military-age males of any sort, right? I see Afghans coming in by the thousands. I've had people come through that say they're from Gaza.
CBN News correspondent Chuck Holton has also reported from the Darien Gap and says he has no doubt dangerous persons are headed for the U.S. border.
I interviewed a guy from Afghanistan. We found many people from Somalia and Yemen. We found people from Syria, Iran. We have seen people coming through.
Former Agent Caron is especially concerned about America's ports, where Customs and Border Protection is supposed to scan every incoming container for radiation, but physically inspects only 3%.
We have 328 ports of entry into America. They all have to be secure, and many of them are soft.
Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy warned this week that what happened in Israel could happen here. McCarthy said, "We should wake up ourselves. We could have the same thing happen next week to us. Our intel is never perfect, and we've got a wide-open border."
The idea that they don't want to attack us again like a 9/11, but even bigger, is foolish. They want to attack us. They want to destroy America.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thank you, Dale. Well, turning now to Israel and the mobilization of 360,000 reserves in response to the Hamas terror attacks. It is the largest military call-up in the Jewish nation's history, amounting to about 4% of the population. CBN national security correspondent Caitlin Burke looks at what that means for those who find themselves preparing for combat on a moment's notice.
Within the Israeli Defense Force, it's known as the shift, going from 0 to 100, from civilian life to war, in an instant.
The sea can be calm and easy and nice, but within a minute, you can get to a storm.
Arad Levertov is a reserve officer in Israel's most elite special forces unit, Shayetet 13. In 2006, he returned to combat for the Lebanon War, leaving behind his pregnant wife and a successful career to join his unit on the front lines.
I knew that my team was focused on the north side of Israel, and within hours, you leave everything. You say, you give a kiss goodbye, and you go to the war.
Now, a new generation of warriors answer the call, some responding immediately from their homes in Israel.
Within hours, the Shayetet had troops of reserve fighting against terrorists. Within hours, I'm talking about still Saturday, midday. Think about it. They left the life, they came to the base, they got the gear, they took a helicopter and went to fight.
Others returning as quickly as possible from abroad.
I jumped on the first plane I could and I came here. It's not easy to leave the family behind, especially because they are in the US. So it's not easy. But I feel that it's necessary.
Levertov now serves on the board of an organization known as AFINS, American Friends of Israel Navy SEALs. Since the attacks took place, they've raised more than $1 million to support Shayetet 13 units and their families. Their sister organization in Israel, the Atalef Foundation, spreads those funds where needed, from supplying equipment to help the influx of soldiers to providing housing and childcare to the families left behind. Levertov says these groups will also be there when the war is over.
There's going to be a lot of PTSD of this, right? I mean, people see something that you never even imagine and don't wish to your enemies to see. And that Aleph specifically has a lot of programs to support PTSD, not only for the Shayetet, but for the entire IDF.
For now, the focus is on the battle ahead. And Levertov says each soldier fighting is clear on their mission.
And the mission, as I mentioned, is to fight terror and to get that we can live in security in Israel, but not only in Israel, around the world.
All Israelis must serve in the military when they turn 18, men for 32 months, women for 24. After that, most can be called up to reserve duty until the age of 40 or older in the case of a national emergency. Levertov says after the Hamas attacks, 150% of the number called up responded to serve. Everyone eager to do what they can to serve their country. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, Caitlin. Gordon, a historic shift for the IDF and Israeli reservists.
An historic shift for the entire world. We need to recognize what we're looking at. We are looking at the face of evil. We've been reporting on all the political divide in Israel, the marches, the protests, the inability to elect a government, all of these things, a divided nation. We're now seeing them unified, and we're seeing them saying, yes, we have to go. We have to fight. What we're facing is absolute evil. I mentioned this quote earlier. This is a quote from October 8th. This is one day after the horror that was in southern Israel. It's incredible that he goes on Russian TV to say this. The Israelis are known to love life. We, on the other hand, sacrifice ourselves. We consider our dead to be martyrs. The thing any Palestinian desires the most is to be martyred for the sake of Allah, defending his land. Now, here's what they did to defend their land. They invaded, they abducted women, they took them as hostages, they abused them. They killed babies. They burned people alive. They cut off limbs of living people. They tortured them before they killed them. All of these things are coming out of southern Israel right now, and it's absolutely horrific. Now, what is the world doing about that? We're already hearing from the EU, we're already hearing from the UN that they're watching Israel closely to see if there are any war crimes being committed. I look at those reports and go, you've got to be kidding me. But we're hearing it even in the United States. I saw 2 cable news interviews yesterday. These are U.S. reporters. They're talking to IDF spokesmen. And it literally made me want to throw things at the camera. I mean, at the TV set. I'm going, you've got to be kidding. You're actually asking that question. One of them was, why isn't the IDF allowing humanitarian aid to go into Gaza? Well, number one, IDF is. They have restored water services. They're not trying to starve out a civilian population. It's absurd to even claim that. But the IDF spokesman said, well, have you heard the report from UNRWA, the UN relief agency, that their supplies of medicine were stolen by Hamas? They came in with with weapons, and they took all the medicine. And it didn't seem to faze the interviewer at all, as somehow medical supplies should still be delivered when the IDF would know it's going to their military opponent. It makes no sense to me. Then we had another question, that is Israel worried about war crimes? And isn't the collective punishment being visited on Gaza somehow a war crime? And they kept talking that. Well, the IDF officer, he kept his temper, but you could clearly see he was irritated. Do you not understand what we do? That we warn, that we do whatever we can to not target civilians, but our opponent is intentionally using civilians as shields. They are intentionally putting rockets in mosques. They are intentionally putting in schools. They're intentionally using hospitals as weapons storage areas. They're doing this intentionally in order that we would have to strike them. If we're going to get a military advantage, we would have to do it. All of that isn't getting through, I think, in the public discourse. Let your voice be heard. Let your voice be heard across this nation and around the world that, no, we stand with Israel. We have seen the face of evil. We have seen what this means. when the Palestinians say, we are all Hamas, well, we believe them when they say that. If they want to be martyred, well, we believe them when they say that. But when they come and attack innocent civilians who are trying to live at peace, and they do that so brutally, we have to respond. Now, here's what the Bible says. All of them slain, fallen by the sword, who caused terror in the land of the living. Let that be our watchword. Let us stand with Israel as they stand against the face of evil. Well, here's another story for you, and I hope it encourages you. David, he was walking his dog when the first bombs fell on his community near Gaza. Suddenly, he saw 15 pickup trucks headed his way with terrorists on a mission to kill.
As the war in the Holy Land continues, CBN Israel is in communities and working to help people in need. Thousands have fled their homes. CBN Israel is evacuating many families to safety.
Everybody now understands that we need to be together, so it really helps. The trauma is very, very strong, so they need to feel very safe in order to come back to their homes.
David is a leader of a kibbutz located near Gaza. He was one of the first to realize his community was under attack. Miraculously, he and his family survived.
Saturday morning in about 6:15, between 6:15 to 6:30, there was a big bombing. Right after that, I was taking my dog out. I was looking at the road, and I was seeing something like 15 pickups. They were very equipped. They knew the area. They understood exactly what they're doing. They come to kill. They come to slaughter. I've been in fighting. I've been in combat. This is not that. This is not that. This is completely madness, okay? Madness.
Waiting for the army to arrive, David spent the day fighting and putting out fires. Then, an explosion.
It was a bomb that actually destroyed a house that was next to the room that we were staying. So I don't know if it's a luck, if it's a miracle. I cannot even describe that.
Thanks to your support, CBN Israel is working with a number of organizations and buying food for many families in need. Those families are thankful for everyone who's helping them.
I'm grateful for them. I mean, of course, they're my brothers and my sisters. And that's the way I look at them. So I'm very happy that we have this communication and connection with them. They're part of us. We're part of them.
And we want to show that we're with them, that we're standing with them. There's an area called the Gaza envelope. The Israeli government has evacuated all the citizens from there. That's thousands of people that are in need of food, they're in need of shelter, they're in need of care, and we want to stand with them and say, yes, we want to help you in your hour of need. If you'd like to join with us on that, you're part of it when you become a 700 Club member. So just pick up the phone and say, I want to join. I want to join with all you're doing around the world. 1-800-700-7000 is the number to call if you want to designate your gift to CBN Israel to help the people in need right there in Israel. There's an easy way to do it. When you call, ask, I want to give to CBN Israel. You can write to us, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. You can text CBN Israel to 71777, or you can go to cbn.com. There's a place on the giving page where you can designate your gift to CBN Israel. Either way, do it now. 1-800-700-7000. Terry?
Tree branches snapping and the blue and gold colors of a tiled dome. Those are among the last images Captain Dale Black saw before he heard and felt the explosion of a plane crash considered to be unsurvivable.
Airplane pilot Captain Dale Black was the lone survivor of a horrific plane crash when he was only 19 years old.
Speed was recorded by the NTSB at 135 miles per hour. It was considered non-survivable. The airplane just broke into literally a couple thousand pieces, and then 3 pilots fell to 70 feet to the ground.
In his book, Visiting Heaven, Dale shares his remarkable brush with death, his journey to heaven, and his miraculous recovery that taught him how to live without limits.
Dale Black's story is remarkable. It's wonderful to have you with us on the program
It's a
today,
pleasure
Dale.
to be with you, an honor.
Go back to that moment if you can, because for a long time your memory was lost to the details of things. But when the impact happened, what was that like for you?
I was looking down at my body and recognizing that I couldn't be dead because I'd never felt more alive.
Yeah.
I looked down and saw, oh my gosh, that poor young man, Dale. He died so young and he had so much to do. And then all of a sudden, I began to realize, this is about 20 seconds later, I began to realize, oh my gosh, I'm a spirit.
Wow.
And I have a soul. Yeah. And I used to live in that body. And all of a sudden I realized, Terry, that I had my whole life upside down. I was living for what I looked like, what I could do, what the money I could make. And I had my spiritual life down at the bottom of the totem pole, barely dealing with it. Although I must say, thank God I was saved. At a 12-year-old young man, I sincerely, honestly gave my heart and life to Jesus, invited him in. I was full of zeal. And then I drifted little by little off course until this crash occurred.
Well, not unusual for a 19-year-old to kind of have all of life and the dreams and the goals ahead of him. You, after the crash, I mean, it was remarkable, honestly, that you lived because you had so much body damage. I mean, you fell 7 stories once the plane crashed. Yeah. You had parts of the plane, glass, everything embedded in you, and eyes severely damaged. We'll talk about that in a minute. But for 3 days, you were in a coma. What happened to you during those 3 days?
Well, this is the strangest thing, and it's a real story that doesn't fade away. The memories are always there, because I think the memory is right here in my heart. Mm-hmm. I think the memory is here.
How could it not be?
Yeah. And how could it not be? It's correct, because my body was on the earth, but I had seen the other side. I'd gone to heaven, and I had a just incredible experience. My first impression, if I could say what's the most that I noticed right away, was the music, the feeling and hearing the sounds of music and feeling the music go through my cells and seeing the intense light that I'd been seeing for quite some time and recognizing with no one saying a word, I knew the light was coming from God. There was no doubt. Everybody knew it was God.
Were you frightened? What did it feel like?
No, I felt like I was maybe a kid on a special ride at Disney World, Disneyland. I didn't have any fear, didn't have any concern about what was behind me back on Earth. I was just looking forward, but...
I was interested in your description of heaven because I've heard people who've had death experiences say the same thing, that everything is alive there. Things that would be inanimate objects here are alive there, that there's a life and a pulsing to it all. Yeah. It must have been mesmerizing.
It is and was, and it's like, you know, even our eyes, there's all this light spectrum in reality, but our eyes can only see this much. But I think in heaven, we're enhanced. Same with sounds and so on.
We are not even touching the tip of the iceberg on all of the things that you describe and define in here. And yet for 40 years, you had decided not to share it. Talk about the conversation with your grandfather and why that happened.
I told my grandfather about what had happened. I knew that he was not really too Pentecostal or charismatic, as we would say today. He was a dyed-in-the-wool, kind of a Baptist type guy from the Nazarene Church. So I couldn't tell him everything, but I told him enough to where he said, now, Dale, is this story sacred? Oh, Grandpa, yeah, it's sacred. He said, are you sure you want to tell it? Grandpa, I don't want to tell it. I'm just telling you because I got to talk to somebody. And anyway, he said, well, and he cried, and he said, that explains why you're healing so fast. Yeah. That explains a lot. And I said, Grandpa, what am I to do with this story? It's changed everything, and I'm beginning to understand more and more. And he said, you consider this. Do what God has told you to do. Always do what God tells you to do. But why not consider at least living your life on what you think you heard and saw and become a reflection of that experience? So I went and prayed about it, and boy, I was glad that I didn't need to talk about it.
Why did you finally decide to talk about it? I mean, there's actually a movie.
Yeah, it was 40 years later, and I just felt like my heart was being pounded on and my ribs were being nudged, and I couldn't sleep until I agreed, okay, Lord, all right, I'll do it. And funny, I said, I'll do it, but only for family and kids. You know, I'll tell the story and we'll put it in writing for family. And then when I'm gone, whatever you want to do with it. Of course, God had other plans. And my wife was a large part of the making of this book.
I want to say it's a remarkable story. There's an upcoming movie called Near Death Experience, I believe.
After Death. Yeah.
After Death Experience. And so watch for that. I've been seeing ads for it that it's coming out, but Dale's book is called Visiting Heaven, and it is available nationwide. If you'd like to find out more about that new movie, After Death, go to cbn.com. We've got some information there. Dale, it's a remarkable story. Thank you for sharing it.
My pleasure.
Great to have you with us today.
My pleasure. God bless you.
Welcome back to Washington for the CBN News Break. The House of Representatives votes on a new speaker today. Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan has gained the support of a number of Republicans who did not plan to vote for him at first. He also has the support of former President Trump and ousted Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The vote scheduled for noon today, but it's not a lock. Jordan could fall far short of the 217 votes needed to end his bid. Or if he's close, it could set the stage for multiple votes like we saw with McCarthy back in January. Well, in case you missed it over the weekend, a rare spectacle dazzling sky gazers across the Americas. The moon passing in front of the sun Saturday, creating an annular solar eclipse. The eclipse darkened skies, leaving a blazing border around the sun and creating the so-called Ring of Fire visible to millions of people. The next Ring of Fire eclipse visible from the American skies won't be until the year 2039. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.
We want to take some time to answer some of the email questions that you all have sent in. Gordon, this first one comes from Belinda, who asks, who owns Gaza and why do the Palestinians think it's theirs?
Linda, that's a great question. The reason has to do with the number of times Israel has been conquered. And when you get back all the way to Joshua, and in Joshua chapter 11, there are 3 areas that Joshua didn't conquer. He was given the ability by God, wherever your foot would tread, you get to have it. And for whatever reason, he left out 3 areas. One is Ashkelon, the other is Gath, and the other is Gaza. Gath is where Goliath came out of. Gath was utterly destroyed a long time ago. Ashkelon was destroyed. It's currently been rebuilt as an Israeli city, and that's only happened in the last 70 years. It's now one of the major ports of Israel. But Gaza has always stuck out, and today it's become an absolute stronghold for terrorists. The Muslim Brotherhood created Hamas. And there was the famous Hamas covenant that there is no negotiation with Israel. Israel must cease to exist. They must wipe Israel off the map. And that was their vow. That was their covenant that they made. Well, they've tried to disassociate themselves from the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm not sure they're all that successful with it. The reason being is the Muslim Brotherhood was declared illegal in Egypt. And so if you were a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, if you took that vow, you would be put in prison. Egypt doesn't want Gaza. They view them as these radicals that all they want to do is foment violence. They don't want them. There's a fight between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. Will they ever get together? It's absolute mess politically. But when you say, why do they think it's theirs? Well, that's because it's been outside of Israel since Joshua.
This is John who says, are you currently taking donations that will go directly for relief to Israel?
Absolutely. It's called CBN Israel. It's a designated fund. We've had to shut down movie production, documentary production because of the war. Part of that fund used to go to those efforts, but because those efforts aren't possible now, that complete effort has been shut down. Part of it does go to news reporting, but that budget's already set. So new donations coming into CBN Israel are going to relief in Israel right now.
This is Teresa Gordon who says, I have a biblical question for Gordon. Where in the Bible does it refer to Israel being attacked as one of the definite signs of the end of times?
You find that in Ezekiel chapter 38, and it's the war of Gog and Magog. The nations of the earth coming against Israel. If you've ever heard the word Armageddon, those nations gather in the valley of Megiddo, and it's a war against Jerusalem. They're amassing, focusing all of their strength so that they can then move on and take Jerusalem. I don't think we're there yet. Do I think we're in birth pangs? You bet. But there's so much unfulfilled prophecy, and specifically the prophecy that God is going to pour out his Spirit on the sons and daughters. That means the children of the prophets will become the prophets once again. I will yet once more be inquired of Israel for this. And you find that in Ezekiel 36. These are unfulfilled. So when is the great outpouring going to happen to Israel? That's something I'm praying for. The other condition is that Israel has to be at peace. Israel hasn't been at peace since 1948. I mean, there have been these sort of short cycles, but they haven't rested from the wars. They haven't come to peace. So we've got some time, and in that time, I encourage Christians, what are you doing to fulfill the Great Commission? Because that's another prerequisite, that the whole world will hear the gospel as a witness. So let's redouble our efforts. Let's get the job done.
This is Debbie who says, as a Christian, how do I respond to a Muslim friend who supports the attack on Israel?
I would be very blunt with them. Why do you want to kill people? Call it for what it is. It's murder. It's mayhem. Why do you want to behead babies? Why do you want to cut the limbs off of living people? Why do you want to throw gasoline on people and light them on fire? What in the world is that? And if that is something that people are chanting, God is great while they're doing it, well, I don't know that God. Why would you ever want to worship that God? When you look at that, that's the face of evil. And if they support the face of evil, they've got to ask themselves the question, what am I doing? And why am I doing this? This is horrible. We leave you these words from Jesus. In this world, you will have trouble. And it's great. Take heart. I have overcome the world. When we look at the problems today, let's look at Jesus. He is the answer. God bless. We'll see you again.